Bob Day, Family First Senator for South Australia. Welcome to the program, Senator.
Yeah, good morning. Look, there's far too much money involved here these days, and whilst these they might say, union super funds have done quite well. Yeah, that's true, but this is a worldwide trend. Corporate governance now, there's far too much money involved. It's retirees' money. It's too important just to be left to unions and employer organisations. And
so you won't be part of the other crossbenchers and small parties who are going to, by the looks of it, thwart this?
Well, not necessarily thwart it. I mean, it's only common sense that to part of this corporate governance to have 1/3 of directors to be independent of either the unions or employer organisations. And let's be frank, there's been a lot of evidence lately about collusion between employer and employee organisations, and to have 1/3 of the board as independent of either employer or employee organisations handling hundreds of billions of dollars of ours, and that's your retirement fund as well, guys, that you're just going to leave in the hands. I just think it's game over. This is a no-brainer.
I think one of the
Sarah Hanson-Young.
I think one of the issues here is the way the government has structured this legislation is it's really set up the idea that this is more about letting the banks get their hands on people's retirement funds than dealing with what might be some legitimate tweaks to the structure of these organisations, these super funds, that could ensure that employees get more representation. I'd prefer to see employees get more representation for how their money is used to build, nice, good super stocks. But the idea that we're letting independent people come in who predominantly are going to be talking for the banks, and those big banks are making huge profits. And
that'd be a good reason to have them running super,
people.
Wouldn't it?
Well, it's not going back to the consumers, is it? It's billions of dollars in profit, and they're still asking for the taxpayer to prop them up.
Sarah Hanson-Young.
Just Bob Day on that.
I disagree with that. I mean, you can question the motive of why they want to do this, but again, it's our money, it's our future retirement nest eggs, and I think to have 1/3 of the board of these retirement super funds being independent of anyone. Now, whether the banks, some have common directors with banks is another matter, but like I say, I think it's a no-brainer. It's just got to go. It's a worldwide trend. You just can't. The kind of impost being put on companies these days has to be similarly applied to super funds.
Now, Bob Day, what do you make of this bill to strip dual nationals involved in terrorism of their Australian citizenship? Nick Xenophon, he's worried about it. What do you say?
No, I support it. I think this it's a new phenomenon, but this is a really serious situation. And when someone who's a dual citizen, not just an Australian citizen, but someone who holds dual citizenship, if they go and fight for a foreign power, then I think we should have the right to strip their citizenship from them.
Nick Xenophon, you're still with us, Independent Senator for South Australia?
No, he's gone.
He's not. He's gone, Nick Xenophon.
Jackie Lambie gave him a really
She gave him the death stare.
Yep.
Sarah Hanson-Young, Greens Senator for South Australia. Nick Xenophon's argument is that, we want to get these people back, prosecute them, put them in prison, and throw away the key. That's I don't know what you'd prosecute them for.
Well, it's similar to the argument I put forward on this show last week, guys. If they are terrorists, if they are mass murderers, if they want to inflict harm on people, then there's lots of all those things are illegal under the current law, and we should, if we know who people are, if we have the ability to charge them, the ability to give them a sentence and lock them up, throw away the key. I think that's the safest way of dealing with this.
It'd be a lot more effective, wouldn't it, though, to strip them of one of their nationalities, because then they're
and let them roam free, blowing up people around.
Well, not blowing
up
people in Australia, though, are they?
Well, exactly.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Do we care about making the world safer? Do we care about ensuring that Australians who travel overseas, where most terrorist activities happen, do we care about the safety overseas, or is this just about the government looking like they're doing something? Because this law doesn't sound like it's going to make anybody any safer, but of course it does give Malcolm Turnbull and his front bench the opportunity to say they've passed a law, therefore everybody can feel safer. I mean, get over it.
No, that's not true. The government's first duty and responsibility is to protect its own citizens, and this is a very good way, and I agree with the government.
How does it make anybody safer, though, Bob?
Because it doesn't bring them back. It leaves them over there. It does not bring them back to Australia. And we know how the court system works, and they have appeal after appeal and challenge and High Court challenge, and before long they're back on the streets again. I think this is a good move. Look,
I don't think we should be exporting terrorists to the rest of the world. I think we should be locking them up and throwing away the key.
We don't need to. There are already enough terrorists around the world. We don't need any of them back on our soil.
Sarah Hanson-Young, on climate change, we have a government asking for a 27% cut on 2005 emissions level. The Labor Party wants a 45% cut. Now, both of them have got some stick from Warwick McKibben, a very respected economist who writes in the Financial Review today that the government's not going to be able to reach its target through direct action, and Labor's policy, you'd need a $200 a tonne price on carbon to achieve anything like a 45% cut. Now, you're going to tell our listeners you want even more, I expect.
Well, if we're serious about tackling climate change, if we want to keep temperatures below the 2 degrees, which is what science is telling us is the very, very dangerous tipping point, then we're going to have to cut emissions, and anywhere between 60 and 80% by 2030 is what the Greens would like to see.
Well, what would that cost in terms of the price of carbon? If a 45% cut would cost us $200 a tonne, which would be a massive hit to the Australian economy, what would a 60 to 80% cost?
Well, look, it's about how we prioritise these things.
No, but have you crunched the numbers? But if we could answer that question, have you crunched the numbers? Do you know what that would cost?
I don't know what that would cost off the top of my head, guys. But the issue here is that you use a number of measures. You invest in renewable energy. One of the best things we could do to ensure that we don't reach that 2 degrees tipping point is stop opening new coal mines. Why are we building new coal mines and exporting more coal overseas when we know that is exactly what is leading to this acceleration towards climate change? The $9 billion that an Australian taxpayer spends every year giving tax subsidies to fossil fuel companies. We could save $9 billion right there if we got rid of fossil fuel subsidies.
You're here on 8 on 1 Breakfast, Super Wednesday. Nick Xenophon, Sarah Hanson-Young, and now Senator Bob Day, Family First Senator from South Australia, all South Australians. Bob Day, what's Family First policy on global emission targets, certainly for for Australia?
Well, look, there hasn't been any global warming for 18 years. Before that, it was global cooling. We have a different position entirely, probably diametrically opposite to what the Greens has on this. We think that this whole Paris climate change conference is an absolute total waste of time and money, as was Copenhagen, as was Kyoto, as was Rio, and all these others. To call carbon dioxide pollution is just absolutely ridiculous and unscientific. And if South Australia is not bankrupt by the time it wants to introduce these kinds of renewable energy targets, it certainly will be if it introduces that sort of policy.
Bob Day, Family First would make no effort at all to reduce our carbon emissions. Is that right?
Absolutely. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and I'll repeat this, there is no evidence whatsoever that carbon dioxide is influencing the climate.
Wow.
None at all. For 35 years, as carbon dioxide was increasing in the 1940s and 50s and 1960s and 70s, there was global cooling. What causes climate change, and the Earth's climate changes all the time, it's caused by the sun's activity, not man's activity.
Sarah Hanson-Young.
There hasn't been any global warming, as we know, for 18 years.
Sarah Hanson-Young.
Oh, I'm just so glad I got to study science at school, guys.
And so did I. I got to study science at school and after school.
Well and truly, the evidence is in. The majority of scientists around the world.
No, that is not true. The majority of scientists do not agree.
If
Do
anything,
not believe that.
if
Do
anything,
not agree with that.
I've been listening this morning to the comments from leaders in the Pacific Islands, and they're feeling the brunt of climate change right now. It's not something that's some miss in the
no
future.
effect on.
They're feeling
on,
it right
on
now, and it's time we got on.
Islands have not been sinking.
Senators, we must leave it there. Thank you for your time. Greens Senator Sarah Hanson-Young, Bob Day, Senator for South